Okay, so Givaldi. So today is Chulin Ayin Dalet Amid is Ayin Dalet Amid Aleph, and really we ran through the last shtickle Gemara. I just want to go back and say over that Gemara a little bit, discuss with Craig's Kasha also, and the Pshatava of the Gemara. There's a very interesting Gemara, right? The Gemara at the end of Ayin Gimel brought down a brisa. We had a brisa. And it said, "Dupasa basad the treifa loisechelu lahavi ha'ever va'abasa hamadul dalim bebehema u'b'chayaboiv v'shachton shehem asurim." Right? That the pasuk of basa basad the treifa loisechelu is going on aver basa hamadul dalim, which seems like things that are like they're falling off somewhat, and then he shechted it. So sheim asurim. So the brisa really doesn't say that you're going to be over loisechelu. The brisa says sheim asurim, and Taka the Gemara says Amar Rav Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan ein by ela mitzvahs proish. Only sheim asurim. There's only isim drabanan and not isim daraisa. The brisa says a pasuk. Saktoisus asmachta. No problem. It's an asmachta. Then there's a very, very interesting Gemara, a very odd Gemara. The conversation. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yosef was sitting in front of Rav Huna, and he said, Achloi lazeh loika. Achloi lazeh loika. Then there was somebody else in front of Rav Huna that came, and he said, Achloi lazeh loika. Both members of Rav. Okay, so Rav Huna says, I'm up the creek. I have one Talmud that's saying over from Rav Loika. One Talmud that's saying from Rav Eina Loika. What should I do? Sakti Gemara, Adrinu Rav Yosef la'apei. Rav Yosef looked at him, looked upset. He said, Amalei my kushya. Ki amri ana b'misa doisa nipo, ki ama iyo b'shchita doisa nipo. What are you talking about? I'm talking about misa, he's talking about shchita. Hello. The brisa was talking about shchita. Rabbi Yosef said on that brisa, achlei lazeh loika. How was anybody supposed to know that you're talking about misa? The brisa said again. What did the brisa say? It said, "Ubasa basad cheva loisechelu lahavi ha'eva v'abasa amadudon bebehema b'chaya b'oif v'shachton shehem asurim." On that, Rabbi Yosef said, achlei lazeh loika. And now you're going to go say all of a sudden, what do you mean? I'm talking about my kushya? What do you mean my kushya? If you would have said that you're talking about by Misa, that would be fine. But you say you were talking about the Bryce, and Bryce says before you were talking about Shchita. What's going on over here? Well, right? Very obvious question. Yeah? Okay. The other question is like this. The other question is like this. Is Craig's kasha? Craig over here, the Gilad Hashas says a poshta kasha. He says that when the Gemara says ki amar na, right? What's called it when Rabbi Yosef says my kushya? What do you mean? Ki amri ana but misa doisa nipol. So Rashi, what's in the gay that misa doisa nipol? So what would have you said? It's negay every single time. What's a negay nipol? What is a negay nipol? What's misa is a nipol, right? Misa is a nipol means that what? Misa is a nipol means that if you have an animal that dies, misa is a nipol, right? Meaning that you have an animal that dies, and the rest of the behema is all nevela. But there's one piece that was teetering as is. It was falling off beforehand, and now there was a misa, so it's oisa nipol. What does that mean? That means that we don't look at it as an nevela like the rest of the animal, because the rest of the animal had no misa, had no shchita. Narvas, we look at it as eva menachai. And what's that loch of eva menachai? So what would you have said? Zucker Krego, we have the regular nafkamina that goes on all over. What's the nafkamina that goes on all over? The two nafkaminas of Eva Menachai and Nevela are. One nafkamina is that Eva Menachai are Huzu, B'nai Noach are also Huzar. And secondly, that Eva Menachai is only Basar Gid Matzabas. It's a full Eva. It has to be a full limb. It can't be just Basar. Mashenka by Nevela is just a Basar. So that would be the nafkamina. That what? That I'm saying that Misa Zoysa Nipol. Misa Zoysa Nipol. In other words, that what? That it's Eva Menachai. That's Eva Menachai. B'meila what? If it's Eva Menachai, it's a B'meila Basar Gid Matzabas. And second of all, Huza B'neich. Rashi over here decided to say a new pshat. Rashi over here decided to say that what? Ki amri anod deloy mishom Eva Menachai b'misa doisa nipol. Vashbiyecha Rav deloy mishom nevela masrina bei. Ela mishom Eva Menachai. You know what? It's negay. It's negay when you have to do asra. If you want to give malchus, make sure you have the right asra. Why did Rashi say that? What? Let's go back to that brisa that we started with. What is this brisa saying? Why did the brisa say an asmachta legabe shchita? What's going on over here? It's talking about shchita. Why is it talking about shchita? Shchita is enyois and nipol. What's going on over here? The teretz is going on like this. The pasuk says, "Ubasa basada treifa loy soichel." So why does it say shchita? Why does it say shchita? And why don't we say about misa? Why don't we just say misa is nipol? What's going on in this brisa? The teretz is like this. The pasuk says, "Ubasa basada treifa loy soichelu." Now, for whatever reason, Chazal saw in this pasuk, and the Mefarshim talk about it, that somehow for the pasuk of Basa Basada Treifa, we darshan also the Gabi Nipol, even though there's a lot of other things we learn from that pasuk. Okay, whatever reason, we darshan something about Nipol because it says Basa Basada Treifa, whatever it is that we're learning out Nipol, whatever it is. But Chazal were bothered. Why did it say Lo Chelu? What do you mean Lo Chelu? You shouldn't eat it. Anyways, I'm not going to eat it. Why am I not going to eat it? Because why? Because it's an avela. So mikayach that doichak that it says you should not eat it. We that's where it gave us the mukar to have an asmachta legabe shchita. But the ikad rasha, what's the ikad rasha the pasuk? The ikad rasha is avada legabe misa. So the asmachta is from the fact that it says lo yisaychelu. You should not eat it. What do you mean not eat it? Of course I'm not eating it. I anyways can't eat it. Right? So because mikoyach that we said what? That avada it's asmachta legabe shchita. But avada it's only yisad drabanan. Nervous, because what's the real pasuk talking about? The pasuk is talking about misa. And if it's talking about Misa, there you have taka the Issa of you have the halacha of Nipol. Mashen came by Shchita, there's no Nipol. So now it's very gishmak. On this pasuk of that says Lo Yisaychelu, on this pasuk that says Lo Yisaychelu, what's taka the teretz to the kasha? What's taka the teretz? Why does it say Lo Yisaychelu? Lo Yisaychelu, you shouldn't eat it. It's also anyway self nevela. The teretz is it's negeya. Negeya, what you're going to be master? Are you master al tzisa nevela? Or you master al tzisa even menachai? So, and what did Rav say on this thing? That achle lazel loike, he's not talking about the asmachta of shchita. He's talking about the ikad rasha. The ikad rasha is about talking about by misa, and since it's talking about by misa, that's why he said achle lazel loike. Of course, he wasn't talking about the one that he says that V'shachtan shehein asurin, that's the asmachta. But the achle lezel like is the ikka pasuk, which is talking about by misa. You hear the cheshbon? So we want to say that the pshat is that the pasuk is going on misa isanipol, and it's not going on shchita isanipol, and by shchita. It's taka achle lezel loike. Taka, there's going to be an issa of loike, and the obvious question is, what's a negea loisachelu? Anyways, the teretz is loisachelu is negea for what? For the hasra, what you're going to be master. Obviously, there's going to be other nafkaminas also. There'll be the other two nafkaminas from Keg also. But the loisachelu is coming to tell you what you're going to be master on. That's the long shtickle weiter. Sag die mal weiter. Sag die mal Amar Rava, Minah Milsa Damer Rabbanim, Misois and Nipple, Shchita Nois and Nipple. How do we know? Where do we have this makar? That where do we see? Where does Chazal know this thing? That where they learn that there's a chilik in between Misois and Nipple and Shchita Nois and Nipple. That there's a chilik in between if the animal dies in that state where it has this Avram Dodelas, or if it is Geshachten. Now this is a passage that says L'gabe Shrotzim, but it says by Shrotzim V'chol Yipol Olav Mehem B'moisam, anything that falls on a kli B'moisam, when it dies Yitma. So what does it say B'moisam for? Lemute Mai. That in other words, that if they lose a limb b'chayayim, it's going to be metame, or it's not metame minav lasam nafka. That first says we're talking about in nevela. Obviously, we're talking about only in death, not when it's alive. The pasuk that says b'moisam is coming to tell you that it's dafka b'moisam lafukei shchita. B'moisam misa oisen nipo ve'en shchita oisen nipo. Frankly, more armor le'ravad b'rava le'rava v'akra b'shratzim ksiv. The pasuk is not even talking about by Bali Chaim. It's talking about by Shrotzim. Amaleim and in Shrotzim the lav b'nei shchita and nutnei lebehema. Lamaisa it says b'moisam, and b'moisam the only thing we can use for the pasuk is to say b'moisam as opposed to shchita, right? And shchita is not negaya by Shrotzim because there is no shchita by Shrotzim. So akarchach emeina inyan we're going to use the drasha for behema. Frekti more vakatimi boyelei kaim misalachim mitami veshmei mitamim. We have a drasha legabe, a different drasha that we use b'moisam for, which is not negeya, which is negeya by shratzim, which is that dafka when it's and misa. Misa is where somebody Rahman al-Islam passes away, when something or someone passes away, which is there's still lachluchas, they don't dry up, there's still lachluchas, there's still wetness, and what happens is, but the person passes away. That's misa. So that's what we say b'moisam and misa lachim mitamim yeveshmei mitamim. But once it's all dried up, it's not mitamim. So we have the pasuk for b'moisam. So tomorrow trey b'moisam ksivi. There's twice where the pasuk legabi shrasim says b'moisam. One of them is taka to say lachim mitamim yeveshmei mitamim. The other one is to say that what the shchita v'loy and misa as opposed to shchita, that what the ein shchita oisen nipol. That's the end of that gemara. Zakti Gemara and Ayi Gemara, and over here is where the lumdis starts. Amar Rav Chizda. Machloikes be'ever de oberchai. Zak Rav Chizda Moridige Chiddish. We have a machloikes Ramei and the Chachamim. What's the machloikes Ramei and the Chachamim? Legabe, what we call Misa Oisenipo, Shchita Oisenipo, which is, it's not really the real conventional shchita and nipple, but the question over here is if there was an aver ayoytze, right? If there's an aver ayoytze, and that aver will not be hota b'shchitas imoi, the question is, does that aver get tomas nevela as well because it didn't have any shchita, so memela it is not hota b'shchitas imoi, or do we say that it's or do we say that it's treifa shchuta, right? That's the Chacham say it's treifa shchuta, that somehow the shchita of the mother works on the Eivra Yoitza Akopanim Avazoivait to take off the Tumas Nevela. Amar Rav Chizda Machloikis, the Chacham Rameis be'Eiver de Uberchai. Is the afker if this fetus, the owner of the Eivra Yoitza, this fetus that's inside its mother, that's Uber Chai. Then Devehakol Shchita Oisenipo. So now what's the pshat in Rav Chizda? Rav Chizda says a Morid Gezach. Rav Chizda says that the Shchita of the mother, like the Chachamim, works to be metayr the hand from Nidei Nevela. Even though the hand is not huta b'shchitas imoi, but it works to be metayr from Tumas Nevela, but only if the child is alive, not if it's dead. What's the svara?
there's no shchita on it.
Oh, sagt mir Moshe. There's the gewaldige, one of the größer Yesodis that declares that we had in this parak. We started off this parak and we're going to have it another few times today. That what? That the suffix is, how does shchita of, how is the child, how is the uber huta b'shchitas imoy? Is the word that we say that the pshat is that the mother's shchita works for the child, or do we say that just like a shchita happened in the mother, the shchita happened in the child? Sagt mir Moshe, very heintig dik. Sagt mir Moshe, very heintig dik. Both dinim are true. Zwei dinim. They're both true. It's not a suffix if it works like that or it works like this. It's both true. Whichever way you want it. Koba Behemoth Eichelu tells you that it's going to be Hota, and you figure it out. It's only possible to say that the Shechita happened on the child if the child is alive. If the Uber is alive, it's possible to have a Shechita. So Mamela, and then you could be matir the hand. How are you being matir the hand? Because the pshat is because it's attached to the rest of the fetus, and the Shechita happened on this fetus. So Mamela, the Shechita happened on the fetus, it's matayah the rest of the fetus. Masha Enkein, if you're not being hutar with if there was no shchita done on this uber, the shchita was done on the mother. Only whatever in the mother is hutar is hutar, not something that's outside of the mother. Yeah, very gishmak. Yeah, the Moshe is saying a barsh tesvar. He's saying like this: shchita is going to work on this fetus only if this fetus on the hand that's sticking out, only if the shechita happened on this fetus. So now, let's figure it out. Did the shechita happen on this hand or not? You want to be matir the hand. How are you going to be matir the hand? Zoktir Moshe, it depends. If I could say that the shechita happened on the child, so then the pshat is, so anything that's attached to the child, the shechita happened on the child. Fine. The hand is part of the child, it happened on the child. So the shechita is going to work on the child, and it's going to be matter the whole thing from Tumas Nevela. Why is it not Huta B'Achila? But if you're going to say that the shechita is not work, but if the shechita is not going to work on the fetus at all, meaning that the uber, there was no shechita done on the uber, the shechita was done on the mother, and that's matter everything inside the mother, fine, it's matter everything inside the mother. But what's matter the hand that's sticking out? It's not in the mother. Does the Moshe?
Mahani, you can't say it's mahani for the even that's outside.
Yeah.
It's all mahani was inside.
Yeah.
Now when it's dead, it can only be mahani. It can't be done. Shechita was done on it.
Right. But then it's so gishmak. Now we have to explain what's Rabbah. What does Rabbah argue with? Rabbah says no. That that somehow the Chachamim hold that even if the shechita was done in the mother, that's matter the child. That's enough to be matter the.
Yeah, that's what he holds. About it's not going to give the shechita on it. You can do shechita on the bags.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. Weiter. Zog die mal weiter. Ben Shmoinachai. So what happened in the Mishnah? What happened in the Mishnah was like this. The Mishnah had a whole shackle of Ataria, if you remember, that we wanted to know if you're going to be how do we know if shechita of a treifa is matir from shechita of a treifa is mitayer midei nevela, even though the shechita is not working to be matir b'achila, but it's mitayer midei nevela. So the Mishnah has this whole shak of Atayah. Let's learn up from all. Excuse me. Let's learn up from all behemoth tameis, right? From lions and tigers. That just since shechita doesn't work on it at all, right? And just like it's not mitayer achila, it's not mitayer from a nevela. If you shechted a treifa animal, it's going to blind a nevela as well. It's going to blind a nevela as well. So let's learn up from a behemoth tameis. So the Mishnah had a shak of Atayah back and forth. And what was the shmuz? The Mishnah said, we said first that a behemoth, a treifa had a shasa kosher, right? It had a shasa kosher before it became a treifa. Mashenkin, a behemoth tameh, never had a shasa kosher. So don't compare the two. That was step one. And then the Mishnah says, whoa. But I have treifa, haresha nolda, treifa me'imai. If something was a treifa me'imai, it was always a treifa. So it's never had a shasa kosher. Are you going to say that shchita shouldn't work there? And the Mishnah says, yeah, but I could still be mechalkta from behemoth to behemoth, because yesh b'mina shchita. Meaning that its type, even though a nolda, treifa me'imai, an animal that was born as a treifa, is in itself, could never ever had a second that it was ever going to be hutta b'shchita, but in its type has a shchita. Then the Mishnah fears ois, without asking a question, no question. A ben ches, ben shmoina chai, meaning a nefel, an animal, a fetus that is born. It's born alive, but it's now. But in the times of Chazal, it was not going to live because it was loy kol loy chadashov. It didn't remain in its mother's stomach for the full 9 months. It was only 8 months. So it's taka. The Mishnah fears ois. It's taka. It's shchita is not going to be mitar. Why? Because ein b'mina shchita. It's not called a bak of itzay. That's how the Mishnah fears ois. Now the Gemara is going to ask that the Teres Kohanim has the same shakla v'tarya, but at this last step, when it comes to ben shmoina chai, the Teres Kohanim asked this as a kasha. The ben shmoina chai is a pircha because this is something that's ein b'mina that's yesh b'minoi shchita and ein shchita semitarasa. Meaning that the halacha of our Mishnah remains the same. Just like our Mishnah said that a ben shmoina chai. Ben shmoina chai, right? Meaning that if an animal that's 8 months, a nefel, if it comes out and you're going to go shecht it, it's still going to be a nevela, it's not going to be a shchita. It's not going to be a shchuta, right? It doesn't have shchita. And that halacha remains like our Tana and like the Tana of Teres Kohanim. However, there's a very, very big yisayis de gechelik. The Tana of our Mishnah has no problem. Okay, it's ein b'mina shchita, meaning that a ben shmoina chai is considered a different type. It's a different type, and its type doesn't have shchita. It's a different type. It's a ben shmoina chai. It's an undeveloped fetus, undeveloped child. Doesn't have underdeveloped shar. Doesn't have shchita. Big deal. But the Teres Kohanim asks that as a kasha, and the Teres Kohanim calls it a yesh b'mina shchita, meaning that even though obviously if you're going to shecht it once it's born, it's not going to work. But if you shecht it before it's born, it will work. And it's considered yesh b'mina shchita. So what's going on here? Is a ben shmoina chai called a yesh b'mina shchita or not b'mina shchita? That's the Gemara's kasha. Vekti Marva Tanya ben shmoina chai yechiach she'af al pi sheyesh b'mina shchita ein shchita mit harasoi. Yeah, that's the Teres Kohanim. Amrav Kana. So what does it mean? So our Tana said that a ben shmoina chai is ein b'mina shchita, and the Teres Kohanim says it's yesh b'mina shchita. So make up your mind. Is it yesh? What's the halacha? Legabi a ben shmoina chai. Amrav Kana yesh b'mina shchita agav imoi. That it has a shchita agav imoi. V'tana teida mina de imoi leparech. Yeah, that in other words, the question over here, the machloikis. The Teres Kohanim and the Tana of our Mishnah is: do we consider that yesh b'mina shchita? Why is that? What's the suffix? Do we consider the fact that there's a shchita, that the shchita happens by the mother on the child, was going to, and it's matin is ben ches when it's in the stomach of the mother? Is that do we call that yesh b'mina shchita? So kipshutai. Right, kipshutai over here, the suffix of the machlokes between the Tana of our Mishnah and the Tana of Teres Kohanim is again the suffix. If you say that the pshat is that the shchita of the mother is a shchita in the child, so then it's possible that you could say by the Teres Kainim is saying it's yesh b'mina shchita, because agavimo is a yesh b'mina shchita. Shchita happens in it. Mashaykin, the Tana of our Mishnah, is saying, what do you mean yesh b'mina shchita? The shchita does not work on this thing. There's no shchita b'chal. What else?
Doesn't help for it.
No, when it's alive, when it's still in its mother, it works.
When it's in its
mother, it works.
But when it's a matzah of shchita, it doesn't work for it. When it goes out.
Right. Okay. So, but yesh b'mina shchita agav imoy. Agav imoy yesh b'mina shchita. You can do shchita in it. Mashenkin, the Tana.
You can't do shchita in it.
That's the kushai. That's the suffix. Is it called shchita in it? But if the pshat is a shchita,
the pshat is if when it comes out, the shchita is not mahani, but the pshat considered a shchita for it.
No, that's for sure. That when it comes out, it's for sure not good. It's not good. Silent.
That when it comes out, the shchita is not mahani, but if that's called that it has a shchita because when it was in it, that was mahani the shchita for it.
What? No, but everyone's masking that when it comes out, it's not mutter. It's only when it's inside, it's a machlokes. And everyone's masking the halacha doesn't change. And when it's inside, shchita works for the child. When it's outside, shchita does not work. Halacha didn't change. Now the question is, do we give that the status of yesh b'mina shchita, ein b'mina shchita?
So the inside, do we give it a status as yesh b'mina shchita?
Right. What's the suffix? So the easy way to out is to say that the machlekes is when it's inside, is shchita happening on the child or not? If shchita is happening on the child, so you say it's yesh b'mina shchita. Why? Because you could shecht on this child when it's inside the mother. You could shecht on the child. Mashenke, the Tana of our Mishnah, holds that since the shchita is not working on the child, it's working on its mother, so this ain't b'mina shchita because shchita never works on this child. Okay, let's go. So the Gemara, ulahai tana de parich treifa de shchitasa mitarasa minale. Yeah, Lamaisa, the Tana of the Teres Kainim bleib shver. Ask a kasha that luchura that let's ask a pircha from a ben chas, a ben ches, right? That so Lamaisa, let's that ask from a ben ches chai that what that shchita is not mitarasai. So let that be a pircha. Treifa the shchitasa mitarasa minali. How does it ultimately learn up from a treifa the shchitasa mitarasa? So tomorrow nafkalim Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Dam Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav va'amri lo b'masnita tana. Some say it's Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Some say it's masnita tana. Amakra v'chiyamus min habehema. V'chiyamus min habehema. The pasuk says v'chiyamus min habehema is a pasuk by Nevela. Mixas behema mitama. Mixas behema ain't mitama. The Torah is saying that there's some behema that's not mitama. Ve'ezazu zu treifa sheshachta. First a pasuk, a new pasuk that tells us that a treifa sheshachta is not mitame. That is how the Gemara ends. Now there's a very simple pshat problem over here, which Taisus asked and Ramban discusses. A very big problem. The Gemara asked, on like the Teres Kainim, how is the Teres Kainim going to learn the halacha of a treifa sheshachta? How do I know? And the Gemara has to bring a new pasuk. I am the Teres Kainim. The Teres Kainim asked the kasha that ben ches yechiach, and the Teres Kainim was up the creek, and the Teres Kainim brings this drasha. Yeah, for Taisus, a small little Taisus. Tzas tema the kula chad the braysi but Teres Kainim the other reisha or the other seifa. It knew the beginning of the reisha and didn't know the end of the reisha. What's going on here? Zok the Ramban. Yeah, Zok the Ramban. Yeah, Vaistois. From here you see a raya that they were not familiar with the Teres Kainims. They were not familiar, and Taka wouldn't be shver. They had a piece of the Teres Kainim, not the other half. Yeah. I mean, it's not just shver for the Gemara's kasha. It's a little bit shver for the Gemara's teres. The Gemara doesn't bring down from the Teres Kainim. The Gemara brings down from Yehuda Marav, right? And then the Gemara says masnita tana, right? So I'm just thinking that maybe it's gufa tali machlekes. The Gemara says, "Naf gelei Marav dam Rabbi Marav va'amri lo masnita tana." What's the machlekes? Machlekes is if it's in the Teres Kainim. It was a machlekes in the Gersais in the Teres Kainim. If the Teres Kainim had that Gersa, Ein Achanami, like the Gersa that it's in the Teres Kainim, you don't have a kasha. But like the first memra of Nafkalim Rabbi Yehuda Marav, and for the Gemara, Nafkalim Rabbi Yehuda Marav, the Amr Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Armi Lo Masisa Tana, and Ein Achanami, like the Masita Tana. Where is that in the Teres Kainim? That's our Gersa in the Teres Kainim, and that Gersa in the Teres Kainim, we didn't have a question. But again, the answer is we were asking Loit Tzad. We have a machlekes if it's a masnita tana or not. It's a machlekes in the girsa if it's in the Teres Kainim. How do I know it's a machlekes? Our Gemara says, the Amr Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav v'Amri Lo Masnita Tana. Some say it's Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, some say it's Masnita Tana. So the Gemara's kasha was Loit Tzad that it's not Masnita Tana, and Loit Tzad not Masnita Tana, not Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. And then we say, Dam Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Yeah? Okay. That would be a mahalach in this Gemara. Okay. So the Gemara right. Boi Rabbi Shia. One of the most talked about sugyas. If let's say somebody stuck his hand into the stomach of the mother, v'shochat ben tes chai mahu. Now, if he shechted a ben ches, it's irrelevant because a ben ches shchita doesn't work on a ben ches. Even right, ben ches meaning an 8-month-old fetus. It doesn't work even if it comes out laver oilam. Rashi read those. But if he shechted, it was already a kol chadashav. It's a full 9-month, full-term fetus. He sticks his hand into the mother's womb and he shechted it there. Zok the Gemara, Tibai l'Rameya, will ask l'Rameya. Ad kan l'kam Rameya ben pekur ton shchito. Rameya, we're going to see, there's the next Mishnah. And this Rabbi Shia is a little bit jumping the gun because the big machlokes Rameya and the Chachamim, which we alluded to a few times already, but it's the next Mishnah mamish at the bottom of the Amid. But we're bringing it in because we're going to try to bring a raya from our Mishnah. But what's the big machlokes Rameya and the Chachamim? The big machlokes is not, besides we had other machlokes in Rameya and the Chachamim, Legabi Tumas Levela and Tumas Treifa. But now we're talking about the machlokes legabe a ben tes chai, which is the big machlokes Rameya and the Chachamim. That Rameya says that the whole din of ben pakua, all the fun that goes on with ben pakua, that's only if you don't have a live child that was born. But if you have a ben tes chai, meaning if the child comes out full-term child that comes out alive, it doesn't work. There's no farms, there's no nothing. Rameya holds that in such a case there is no ben pakua. That's Rameya's shita. So Loit Rameya, Dr. Rabbi Shia, Loit Rameya, it comes out that there's no you have no other option but to shecht this fetus, because you can't shecht it. The mother will never pater this child, right? So Zok Rabbi Shia. So I would have thought maybe that I shouldn't declare by Rameya. No, I'm going to still declare by Rameya. And like the Chachamim, right? And we're going to declare like the Chachamim also. I would think that maybe it's obvious like the Chachamim that you don't have a shchita, maybe because you could still shech the mother. No, I'm going to still declare. That's what Rabbi Shia says. I'm declaring the suffix on both ways, on both ends. He's right. He's declaring the shayla Rameya that I have no other option of being matter this child. Could I shecht it while it's still in the mother's womb? And I'm going to declare it like the Chachamim that I do have another option. Maybe I have another option, but I'm going to still, maybe I could check it still the child itself. So how am I going to explain it? Ad kan lekam Rameya ben pekur ton shchita hanim yechid oilam. The only time that he says that it needs a shchita and the shchita works on it is only when it comes out. Maybe when it's still in its mother's womb, shchita doesn't work. Even like the Chachamim, that they hold that this child I could still shech the mother and I'll be mat to the kid. But he wasn't interested in shechting the mother. He wants the mother to still live and give off more children. Dalid Simonim achsha bei rachmana. Maybe the pshat is that, and the Gemara is going to have this a few times, the lashon of dalid simonim achsha bei rachmana, which means that the pshat is it's not the word that you have to shecht dafka the one set of simonim, one set of two simonim. No, there's two sets. And you can check whichever one you want. You could check the child, the one that's inside, the fetus that's inside, that it's two simonim, or you could check the mother's two simonim. Either one works. Yeah, that is the Gemara. So there's a lot of things to the red ice over here. Let's try to run. We have a ben tes, right? A ben tes chai, right? Meaning that a ben right now it's still in its mother's stomach. It's alive and it's a full term, right? Now this is the case. This is the case where it's going to be a machlokes. We're going to get to the bottom of the Amud. It's going to be a machlokes Rameh and the Chachamim. If when you shech the mother, if the child is hoter or not. Loit the Chachamim, the child is mutter. Not only that, Rav Shimon Shazuri is going to introduce to us today, Be'ez Hashem, in a few minutes, that you could have a 5-year-old child walking around that's already called Geshachten. Why? Because it was in its mother's stomach when the mother was Geshachten, and it was a Kol Chadashav, and it's a full term, and it's going to live, and it lives for 5 years, it's Kairish, and it doesn't matter, we could have the Australian farm. That's what the Chacham hold. If a child, when it's in its mother's womb, the only simanim that can be the simanim that can be materit are the mothers. So maybe those are the only simanim that the Torah gave it, and the Torah didn't give you an option of shechting this child's simanim. Why? Because it still has the option of shechting with the mother's simanim, or not, or no. Daled simanim achshavei rachmana, which means that you have both options. You could pick it up wherever you want. Yeah, that is suffix number one. Now,
it's like an entity for itself that make a sheet on it.
Now you're already adding lumdis. This is what the Gemara is clearing. Idalit simonim achshavei rachmana is the word that you have two sets of. You could have two sets of simonim. You have simonim of the mother that would be mater this child, or the simonim of the child itself. You could do a shchita in either way. Or no, you can only do shchita in one place. That's one hezber. That's one suffix Rabbi Shi is clearing, and he's clearing a different suffix, completely different suffix in Rameya. That Rameya holds that a ben tes chai is not hota b'shchitas imoi. So it's not hota b'shchitas imoi. So if it's not hota b'shchitas imoi, so the only way to shecht this child is only with it cutting its simonim, not its mother's simonim. So why shouldn't I be able to shecht it inside the mother's womb? No, it's still since it's lo yotza la'aver oilam, maybe it's not good. This is the suffix.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So now, it's loaded. But let's first, I just want to say, Stam, to get out of the way, this is a big kasha on the Rambam. Because if you remember, in the sugi of Chalada, we had a machlokes, the Gemara declared about if shechting under a ksos. And it's a ganze machlokes and a ganze shita. Anyway, the Rambam paskins that if somebody shechts, right, normally what's Chalada? Chalada is one of the five psulei shchita. And what is chalada? Normally it means that if you cut between the simonim, right? Chalada is a lashon of a rat. If you burrowed in like a rat, and in other words, and it went between the simonim, and so the knife was ultimately covered over by one of the simonim. That's normally. Now the Gemara declares, and the Rambam paskins lahalacha that shchita will be psula if you shecht it under a beged. If you covered it over the beged, so what? So it's also chalada. It's going under, and going under, it's not good. Yeah, frek the taz on the Rambam. So what's the way she declaring? How are you going to have a shchita inside the mother's womb? Hoishid yadai l'saychima, right? L'mei behema v'shacha ben teschai typically as chalada. That is the kasha of the Taz. So the Shah. So Agavorcha. Some Achronim learn that that's good for Rabbi Shia Safik. Rabbi Shia Safik is not a Lamdash Safik. Rabbi Shia Safik is Gufa if this is a problem of Chalada, and that's the problem. Heichad lo yatsa avar oilam, that's the Safik. That since it's lo yatsa avar oilam, so Mela, that's the problem. That maybe you won't be a Shchita, it'll be a problem of Chalada. That is one side, right? But the Shach says a few terutzim. One of them, he says, is a Meridig Lamdash Teretz. He says, I'm worried to go on Mishateretz there. He says, Chalada is when you're covering something over, right? But if you cut in a room, is that called covering over? Or that's where the behema is. You're not covering over the shechita, the behema is here. Zok Shach, when you have covering over is not totally in the place of the shaychit and the eyes of the shaychit. It's totally in the place of the behema. The behema gefintzach b'meima. And b'meila, it's b'chalal not called chalad. It's not called covered over. That's the lamship shot of the shach. Yeah. Okay. Now, I think what we're going to do is like this. There's a whole shmuz in the Rishonim. The Gemara later on declares the same shayla legabe shechting when the mother's a treifa, right? When the mother's a treifa, again, right? You have really the same kind of a shayla. When the mother's a treifa, right? So you shechted a ben tes chai. The ben tes comes out. The mother was a treifa, so the shechita was not matter. And interestingly enough, it doesn't work on the mother, it doesn't work on the child either. So the child is not hota. So the Gemara is going to declare the same suffix, and seemingly. If I can't shecht, the shechita of the mother didn't work on the child, even though the child was present. Could I now go ahead and shecht the child again? What's the suffix again? Do we say that this child missed its opportunity and it does the shechita is not going to work, or do we say dalit simanim achshavei rachmana, that you have four simanim and you tried there, it didn't work, try again? That's what the Gemara is going to declare. Now the shaila is that Gemara and this Gemara totally, and there's a lot of lumdus on it, and a lot of what's called. I wanted to be married, but I think it's already late. We're gonna leave it for today. I'm just letting you know that we have a very, very similar Gemara Be'ez Hashem coming up, and we'll Be'ez Hashem compare. We'll talk about Tosfos, etc. when we get to that Gemara. So Gemara vaytem. So Zok Gemara, let's bring a raya. We want to bring a raya to Rabbi Shia's Claire from our Mishnah. Why? Because the Lashon, and we're really coming, it's a little bit nitpicking, but we're going for the Lashon of the Mishnah. What was the Lashon of the Mishnah? Hareisha nolda treifa min abeten. If you have, we said that the whole reason why a treifa sheshachta is hotar and it's not tamei is because it was haishaloi shasa kaisha. So the language of the Mishnah was Hareisha nolda treifa min abeten. Meaning that a child that was nolda, meaning that b'shas its birth, it was already a treif, right? It was that it's impossible that something that was born ever had an opportunity to be kosher. What do you mean? Later Baishia, I could shecht it inside this mother's stomach, so I could have opportunity of shasa kosher a second before the labor. That's the Gemara's kasha. Amr Abchanina Tashma Hareisha Nolda Treifa Min Abeten Lo Hoislo Shasa Kosher. V'Misa Mishkachas Lo Hoislo Shasa Kosher. Di Boy Ayel Yodei V'Shachta. I could go and stick my hand in and shecht it right before the labor. Amar Rava Tini Shenoitzra Treifa Min Abeten or Mishkachas Lo B'Balas Hey Raglayim. In other words, when the Mishnah said Hareisha Nolda Treifa Min Abeten, don't chap us by the words. We don't mean Dafka Nolda Treifa Min Abeten that it was that the Treifa happened right before birth. No, we mean that it was first created as a treifa and it was never had a shasa kosher. And what would be an example for that? Would be a child if the child had 5 feet. If the child had 5 feet, so the halacha is that yes, it cannot dummy, especially if it's in the hind legs. So, and it's as if it's missing one of its hind legs, and memela it was a treifa that was loy hois lo shasa kosher ever, because even if you would have stuck your hand in, it was already a treifa before the shchita, even in the mother's womb. So we don't have a pshita, so we don't have an answer to Rabbi Shia's question. Let's move on. We have to move on. We have to see the Heilige Mishnah. This is mamish the Yisod of the Mishnah. This is one of the most foundational Mishnahs in Chulin. Hashoichet es habehema umatzava. If he shechts a behema and he found what? So we're going to have 4 options, right? There's going to be 4 options. Let's say it outside. Let me just say it outside. Because the animal could be alive or dead in its mother's stomach, and it could be kol chadashav or loy kol chadashav, 8 months old, 8 months pregnant, or 9 months pregnant, right? So we're gonna have 4 options. We have matzah ben ches chai or mace, or ben tes chai or mace. And the Chacham are going to say in all 4 cases is huta b'shchita simoy. Rameh is going to say only 3 out of 4. That's going to be our Gemara. Hashoyken as a behemo matzah ben shmoina, meaning only 8 months pregnant. Chai or mace, either alive or dead. I don't care because it's loy kol loy chadashav. Oy ben tisha mace, or a 9-month-old fetus, but it was dead. Kairai umoitzi es damai. So what's kairai umoitzi es damai? This is a very, very Yisod the Gezach, which the Gemara is going to really be Marich and Amid base, but we have to say the Yisod. The Yisod is that the fetus is almost everything is mutter, meaning that there's no Issa Chalev, there's not going to be Issa Gida Anosha, there's nothing. But one thing there is. One Issa remains. And that Issa that remains is the Issa of Dam. Dam is going to remain. Dam is going to remain. No Issa Chalev, no Issa Gida Anosha, but Dam is going to remain. Yeah? Now, why is it? What? Yeah? So let's just finish up Rameh and Chacham, and then I want to go to the Chilikim between the Issa Chalev and Issa Dam. Yeah? But if he found the Ben Teschai, if he found the child was 9 months and alive and kicking, right? A full 9-month-old, full term baby, and it's alive. So Ton Shchita. This animal is a regular, complete, a bona fide animal. Now the language that Rashi says is, the language of Rashi is, and we're going to see what the drush is, what Lumdus is. Rashi calls it, the question is if it's a behema or it's lav behemu. If before it's fully developed it's lav behemu, but Rameh says, but if it's already a matzah ben teschai, so it's already a behema. It's already considered a behema, right? And the chachamim that argue, they hold that it's not considered a behema until what? Until not only do you need kol loy chadashav, you need a full term, and yatzal aver oilam. Since it's lo yatzal aver oilam, it's still lav behemu. That's the pashtus. If you read the Rashi in our Mishnah, that would be the pashtus of the Gemara. Okay, so now let's discuss the chiluk in between chalev and dam, because there's a shtickle alumdus here that the Achronim discuss. What is the chiluk in between chalev and dam? Why is there no issa chalev and there is a dam? So Rashi introduces a pasuk. Rashi has a pasuk, and Rashi says that this pasuk says that there's no issa chalev by a shalul, mashenke and dam. Why not? Mechatesa, because only chalev is nismayit. So Rashi doesn't address the issue of gid at all. And the question is why, right? And so now we have to understand, right? And we'll have to understand what's the pshat by gid and rasha. Okay, fine. The Rosh says a different lumdus. And there are a lot of different ways how to say the Rosh. Some say that the pshat in the Rosh is, the Taz learns in the Rosh, that the lumdus is because the blood of the fetus is also the mother's blood. So Mamela, that's why it's this. Because it goes in, that mixes around. Mashenkin, the chaylev is just the fetus's chaylev. So Mamela, it's mutter. That is how the Taz learns in the Rosh. However, the Achronim say a different svara. What? No, it's the fetus. It's a separate thing. It's a separate entity. Right? But the Achronim say a different lumdus. And they say this lumdus, and l'chura, this will be a eitzah for Gilai Nosha as well. The Issa of Chaylev, the Torah says, asers only on its proximity to, it's the Chaylev she'ala kloyos, and the Chaylev she'ala ksalim. If the Torah says that the Chaylev that's in a certain spot, that's what's aser. Mashenkin dam, it doesn't matter where it is. Since we're not looking at the fetus as a chelik of the mother, right? So therefore it's called by behema techelu, but it's not the chelev ala kloyos. So it's not the chelev ala kloyos. So the chelev is not necessary. A chelev that's also because of its specific proximity is going to be hotar when it's bavlad. Mashein kein dam. Dam has nothing to do with any proximity. It has nothing to do with where it is. So male dam is going to be also. Right? And the same will be by Gid Anosha. The Gid Anosha, its whole Isser is the Gid that runs over the Yerech, right? And since this Gid is not running in that place, so Mamela, there's no makom to asa the Gid Anosha. Mashing the dam is going to be asa. That is the lumdus that they say. So they want to say that the svara that we said, yeah, the big raya, the big bomb raya that we said on the big shaila. Okay, again, let's get back. We always clear is a shchita, and the reason why the fetus is mutter is because the shchita is happening on the child, or is the word that the shchita is mutter because why? Because the shchita is happening on the mother. And kol b'behem b'toichelu. Right? That's the chakira that we're running through the whole parak. So the obvious question, if the reason why the child is mutter is only because the shechita is happening on the child, what's the obvious question? And we discussed it right away in the first day, is that it wouldn't explain the chaylev anyway. If it's not explaining the chaylev, why? Because chaylev is not hotter b'shechita. So why is the chaylev mutter? The teretz is kol b'behem b'toichelu is a blanket heter. So if kol b'behem b'toichelu is a blanket heter and you don't need the shechita, so then maybe that's the reason why the shechita is also mutter. In other words, if I have to anyway say that everything is hotar because it's in the mother's stomach, not because the shechita is being done in the child. So let's already say that's what's being matter the basar also. Why do I say that it's working two different ways? The chaylev is anyways being hotar only because it's in the mother's stomach. So let's say that the basar is also hotar that way. That is the teretz zog right and very geschmack. You know why the chaylev is not aser? It's because it's not chaylev shalak place. It's not chaylev shalak sal. Yeah. But now, so what's shver? So now you have to declare what'll be by when the mother died in his matzah. What's that lumdus? Why doesn't it have a chaylev? Okay.
Dam is no walk.
Dam has nothing to do with the makom. Chaylev and Gid Anosha has to do with the makom. That's what's good. Okay, that's that. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's finish up the Mishnah. Reb Shimon Shazuri. And this Reb Shimon Shazuri does not seem to be arguing with the Chachamim. I think we're going to discuss this. Reb Shimon Shazuri. Afilu ben ches shonim v'chayrish besadeh. Even if the child grew fat and happy, it's already 5 years old, and it is being chayrish basada, it's plowing, shchitas imay mitarosai, its mother's shchita that it had when it was born is mitarosai, and it is fine to eat. Kara, now the Mishnah fears is karo matzah ben teschai. If you repped the mother, You didn't do a shchita. You just killed the mother. And you found there a ben teschai. Ton shchita lefi shloi nishchita imoi. So now you need ton shchita lefi shloi nishchita imoi. So why are we talking about dafka ben teschai in this case? Every animal needs a shchita. Yeah, if you killed the mother and you found in it a fetus, that's ben teschai, then it's ton shchita. Why dafka do we talk about a ben teschai? Why don't we talk about a ben cheschai or a ben tesmes? The teretz is over here in all those other three options, a ben cheschai, ben chesmes, or ben tesmes, you won't be able to eat it. Shchita won't work because it's a treif. It's only negea by a ben teschai. Yeah, very geschmack. Okay, so now, just let's just read Oisazach. So what's the chiddush of this part of the Mishnah? So what's the chiddush of this part of the Mishnah? So after the Mishnah, that you should just know that if there was no shchita ever done, then you have to do a shchita in the child.
Maybe that's mahari.
What's the word?
Maybe once you ripped it, maybe you didn't do a shchita. That's mafkir.
What?
You don't see that you did a shchita on the Uber.
You didn't do any shchita. You just killed it.
You ripped it. So maybe it's considered that you didn't do a shchita.
You didn't do shchita in the mother.
So maybe shchita doesn't help later on.
Oh, me. The chiddush is that shchita works on the child.
Yeah.
Pshh. Rabbi Yishai is clear. Yeah, but then. So then why we say? I don't know. Yeah, that's the. Yeah.
It is a modern mission.
Yeah. So kipshutai. Yeah. What the Mishnah is coming to say is that you should just know that the heter happens only if the mother had shchita. So again, now this is mashma, right? That the pshat is that I never thought that the shchita is happening in the child. I thought the shchita is happening in the mother. I'll just say how I want to learn. Okay, the pshat is like this: the Mishnah, the Ma'aser of the pasuk says, "Kol ba'behema teichelu," right? Kol ba'behema teichelu. Where do we see in the pasuk that it's talking about b'shas shchita? Maybe it's kol ba'behema teichelu in every oifen. Zok the Mishnah, no, kol ba'behema teichelu is only if it's b'shas shchita. But if you have a b'behema teichelu in general, then avad it's going to need its own shchita. Yeah, good. Zok the Gemara weiter. Amar Ablezer Amar Beisha. Let's just see the next shtickle Gemara. Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos in the Pshatov of the Gemara. Rashi cuts out. Rashi says, "I have no eitzah. I have to cut out a big piece of the Gemara because it doesn't make any sense." And Rashi says it was stuck in here by mistake. It was doimed to a different Gemara, but it doesn't belong here. That's how Rashi learns. Tosfos is miyashiv the Gemara. That what? That the whole machlokes. That what? That the Mishnah is only talking about legabe iske shchita. That there's no machlokes. No, we're not discussing a shechting of this ben pekua only by shchita, only being matter for shchita, but nothing else. The mutemai. Lemute chelbei v'gidai? Is it coming to exclude chelbei v'gidai that the chelev and the gid are not going to be mutter? Now, Rashi skips the next couple of lines. Chelbei demai. What kind of a chelev are we talking about? Ilema chel. Right. So we're going to say it inside, but Rashi says obviously we're talking about a ben pekua. That's all we're talking about. Let's just say over the Lashon Gemara. Because we'll say how Tosfos miyasher or Ben Tam is miyasher the Gemara. Chelbei demai. Which chelev are we talking about? Ilema chelbei deshalil. Are we talking about the chelev of the fetus? Now Rashi says, of course we're talking about the chelev of the fetus. What else are you talking about? That's the sugya is talking about the fetus. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the ben pakor. And then Zok the Gemara miflag pligi. It's mefurish machlokes the same machlokes man the chachamim is legabi that the tanya. Gid Anosha Noyig B'Shalil. The Gid Anosha Remeah says that no, the Shalil meaning the fetus, is a Gid Anosha. V'chel by also Divrei Remeah. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Einay Noeg B'Shalul. It's not. There's no Gid Anosha. There's no Issa Gid Anosha by Shalul V'Chel by Mutter. Right? So, V'am Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Oishia, and Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Oishia explained, the same Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Oishia that started this Gemara says, Machloikis B'ben Teschai. Where's this Machloikis of Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda, L'gabe Gid Anosha and Chelev? The Machloikis is Gufa B'ben Teschai. Right? We said there's 4 options by a ben pakor. You can have a ben ches chai or mace and ben tes chai or mace. By a ben ches chai or mace, or by a ben tes mace, there's no machlikas or meir b'yuda. They don't argue about anything. Shchita works of every l'chuli alma, and there's no esa gid anosha, no esa chelev l'chuli alma. The whole machlikas is legabi ben tes chai, where a meir b'yuda argue legabi shchita. So Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yoshia that that there's a machlikas legabi gid anosha and chelev. Also in that case of ben tes chai, v'halach Rameir l'shitosei, the l'shitosei he holds that the shchita doesn't work and nothing works. Rabbi Yehuda l'shitosei that holds that the chelev and that doesn't need shchita, no esa chelev and no esa gid anosha. That's very gishmak the Gemara. Ella, right, and this is all part of the part of the Gemara that Rashi took out. Ella, let's say that we're talking about chel boy the gid. Maybe the machloikis is the gabi the chelev of the gid anosha, which Rashi says. Al Mish is talking about gid anosha. We're talking about ben pakor. We're not talking about a chelev of the gid anosha. But now, what is the chelev of gid anosha? So Be'ez Hashem, we're going to learn about this a lot more later on in the Masechta. But now we're just going to say it real quickly. The gid anosha is a gid that runs over part of the leg, right? Now around it, there's a lot of chelev. Now that chelev is issa midrabanon, the chelev, because it looks like the gid. It's all white. It looks very similar. Now, so Rameir holds that the chelev of the gid, and by the way, this is trebing, the famous thing of trebing, and we don't need to hind legs. A part of it is because of trebing the gid anosha, right? So frek the Gemara, and there's a machlekes Rameir Yehuda. How much chelev? How much of this Issa D'Rabbanan of chelev the gid do you have, right? And the Gemara wants to say that that's what we're doing. Maybe chel the gid. That's what Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yoshia was saying. That they're not talking about chel the gid. Right? Rashi says, well, of course we're not talking about chel the gid. We're talking about ben pakor. Our whole sugi is about ben pakor. We'll get to the remaining time in a second. El chel the gid mifleg pligi. It's a mefurish machlekes Rameir Rabbi Yehuda gabi that as well. The Tanya gid anoshem mechatet achrav b'chol makim shu v'choytech shmanim be'ekroi div Rameir. Rameir holds that you have to go and burrow in and get every single little piece of the chel the gid, of the chelev that accompanies the gid. And Rabbi Yehuda you just take off on the top whatever's over the meat. Yeah? Okay, so now here comes the Gemara. Now this is where, like Rashi, this is where we pick back up the sugya, and we had cut out all those lines. Ella idma hachi idma amra bleza amra boishia lehilchaboy ella al iske achila bilvad, or not al iske shchita, al iske achila, only when it comes to food stuff. The mute roive v'chayrish boy that avada that what? The mute roive v'chayrish boy that what? So Rashi learns that what? That there's still going to be an issa revia, and there's still going to be an issa to be chayrish, but with this animal, it's not going to be. It didn't lose its shem of a shar or a chamar, of shar or a seh, and therefore it's still going to be an issa of klayim and of charisha b'klayim. That's how most of the Rishonim learn. Rabbeinu Chanano, interestingly enough, learns the reverse. That he holds that what? That even Rameir that holds that it's going to need shchita, only legabe shchita do you need. But when it comes to Revia and Charisha, there is no Issa Charisha and Issa Revia. Punkt fakert. That's what Rabbeinu Chanaan says. Let me just say over to Rabbeinu Tam how Rabbeinu Tam is miyashiv shitas the whole shtick of Gemara. Rabbeinu Tam is miyashiv like this: that the Gemara is discussing two things. When the Gemara is discussing chel by v'gidai, the Gemara is discussing the chelev. First of all, we have the chelev sha'ala kloyos, which is on the fetus, and then we're declaring separately the chelev of the gid anosha. So that's what the Gemara says. Why are we saying that chelbay is not noig? Are we talking about chelbay v'gidai, meaning the chelev of the regular chelev shalakloyis, the regular chelev, regular internal fats? Miflag pligi. Ella chelbay the gid, meaning that what? That we're going to have a shaila that we're talking about, maybe that there's no issa chelev on the gid hanasha, the chelev gid hanasha over there. Rameh is not going to argue, and over there the Gemara asks a kasha mechatit acharov. So when we say chelbay the gid, that we don't mean the chelev the gid of every animal. We're talking about chelev the gid of this shalil. And the chelev, the gid of this shalil, the Gemara brings a raya from the fact that Rameh says mechatet acharav b'chol makom shehu, that it's obviously that it's going to be also even the chelev of the gid of the shalil. Okay.